Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Crime on the Record. For those of you who are watching YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. If you're listening via podcast, please make sure you subscribe as well. As always, I have with me my wife and co-host, Candace, and my name is Jason. So this week we are going to talk about Lindsay Buziak.
Yes. So this is Lindsay. She was 24 years old, which is so sad to think that at 24 she lost her life. I mean, she hadn't even
So
started
young.
life.
I know, so
Yeah.
young.
So, and oddly enough, this is a Canadian story because, we don't really hear a ton about Canadian murders. I mean, people in Canada are so nice.
Yeah, right, they are.
So, right. So she was a young real estate agent murdered on February 2nd, 2008. She was lured to a home by a male and female posing as prospective clients, which is terrifying to think. I mean, I'm
Really
sure
is.
all realtors out there worry about these kind of things. And they had called her a few days earlier the woman had called her saying she and her husband were looking for a home to buy and that they wanted to buy immediately.
Yeah, the woman, she said that her and her husband had a budget of $1 million, which that's a pretty big
Wow.
budget. Yeah. And they wanted to find something that was move in ready. And here's the craziest part. So 1 million is a lot of money. They wanted it move in ready, but they could pay cash.
That sounds sketchy, like, immediately.
Right? Who has
I
a
mean,
$1 million just laying around like, hey, I want a house. Let me go get $1 million home with cash.
right?
But I'm sure there's people out there that have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Lindsay even found it odd. I mean, she's in the real estate business, which she even found that odd because, I mean, really, who wouldn't? And she found it odd that they would have reached out to her on such a big sale because she was so new to real estate as well. I mean, when you're talking about $1 million home that you're going to pay cash for, an up and coming real estate agent isn't typically who you go after. You go after somebody that's got a lot of experience, but you know,
Yeah, I mean, when you can afford things, you get the best, and so you would think that you would be calling, like, the most affluent real estate office talking to their top seller.
yeah, especially because if you're paying cash, I would imagine that you've got the ability to really haggle with somebody. You can really get the price, to come down. So you
Yeah,
want
that's
you want
true.
somebody who's good at that. But at the same time, if you're a 24-year-old starting out and you have somebody that calls and asks you to find a house for them, they got $1 million cash. I'm jumping all over that. I mean, but if it didn't sound sketchy enough already, the woman called on her personal cell phone, which she shouldn't have had. So she called Lindsay's personal cell. So just basically the buyers cold called Lindsay, which is really odd for people to do. I mean, I would imagine she's giving her cell phone number out to everybody. Maybe her work
Well,
number, but not her personal.
I know a lot of realtors carry their cell phones, or they'll have, like, a cell phone that they use. I think the biggest thing for her was that she was so new, she hadn't really had the opportunity to give her number out to a bunch of people. So people called her at work or her work phone, but she hadn't even been around long enough for people to have gotten that personal number. So
That's a good
I
point. Yeah.
imagine that was B. So she did ask him how they got her personal number, and the woman who spoke with a foreign accent said she had been referred by a previous client, which, I guess could make sense. But, you know, with this being such a big sale, and I think the woman having a foreign accent kind of threw her off because it's not like she's thinking maybe it's not somebody local.
Yeah.
So being cautious, see, she did try to call the person that they said had referred them, and um, they were traveling out of the country, so she couldn't reach them, which to me was so sad because all I could think was, had she been able to reach them, it possibly could have saved her life.
Yeah. And they took a picture, which is up there right now, showing the notes that she took um, when she talked to the people about what they wanted. And I mean, look at that. It says needs to buy in 3 days.
Wow.
I'd be very interested, like, what would make somebody need to buy such an expensive home in 3 days?
Right.
Yeah,
And
separate.
three bedroom, three bath. My gosh, how expensive is real estate there?
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at it, they wanted a separate area for the housekeeper.
Oh, wow.
So that's, I mean,
I mean,
that's
that does
somebody.
scream money.
It really does. It really does. So on February 2nd, 2008, when the murder occurred, Lindsay and her boyfriend, 27-year-old Jason Zalo, or Zailo, or another pronunciation that we've heard when we
I've
tried to
always
find.
heard Xylo, so I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So we heard it several different ways. So for the purposes of this, his name's Jason. That's what we're
Yeah.
going with. That's it. But they had gone out for a late lunch at a local restaurant, and kind of as a side note, Jason, and his mom all worked at the same brokerage firm, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And I don't know if they owned it or if the mom was just really high up. Like maybe she was one of those huge salesmen. But I think it's well known as like, a family kind of realtor, a brokerage firm. So it may
yeah,
actually be family owned.
yeah, and it's not smart to date somebody that you work with. If you meet him at work, it's just such a bad idea.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
I say that
Rude.
because Candace and I met that way. We're working at the same place, so
So rude. I'm pretty sure they met prior to that though. And,
yeah,
I imagine with his mom and him both being in mortgage, maybe that's what kind of drove her
yeah,
to get into it.
yeah. So, but Lindsay was kind of concerned. She previously had shared with her father as well as Jason that she had some reservations about meeting the couple, just because of the way they reached out to her. I mean, called her on her personal cell. It's such a big sale. It seemed really odd to her. But
Yeah.
Jason encouraged her to take the appointment. There was a large commission at stake, and you know it's a big sale. I can see why you would want say, hey, get out there, and if you do a good job, your name's out there with such a large
Yeah.
sale. So but she was concerned, and because of that, he offered to go with her.
Yeah. So I believe they left. I put that they left the restaurant in separate cars around 4:30. I'm assuming right at 4:30 ish because they swapped the card that they paid the bill for at 4:24. So that gives them a couple minutes
Yeah,
to get out to the car and get going. So approximately 4:30. The appointment with the clients though wasn't until 5:30. So they believe that Lindsay went home to change her clothes. I guess she wanted to wear something a little more upscale and professional. I mean, this is $1 million home.
yeah,
I mean, I know for me, I'm, I do telehealth, so I'm pretty laid back. But if I have to meet a new client or it's a client that is very affluent, because,
hmm,
it gives you kind of we have a screening sheet of when we know, kind of a good idea where the client works, what's going on with them. So, especially when I worked in the office, I'm wearing a suit
yeah,
or something like
and
meeting somebody for the first time, not giving a good impression.
and don't you have like high end clients that are essentially the first appointment they're interviewing you to determine if you're the right therapist for them?
Well, yeah, and I actually have had clients to do that. I mean, I remember one client, and they were a CEO, so I mean, very, very affluent, and they were looking for a therapist for their child. And I believe I was one of like five therapists they had interviewed. So
Hmm.
I won't lie, it kind of made me feel good that they chose me as a therapist because it's kind of nerve wracking. You feel professional and like you know what you're doing until people start interviewing you.
And you're already nervous because they're interviewing you, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, I want you to help my child." No pressure.
Right? Yeah, no pressure. My goodness. So she leaves to, as they believe, to go home and change. And Jason went to meet a colleague, Cohen Oatman. They met at I believe it was like an auto body shop. They were doing some um, business with them, and so there was some paperwork he had to pick up or something like that. And he and Cohen were going to go later that night. I don't know if they were going to like a hockey game or if they were going to play hockey. Some do hockey. It's not my sport. I didn't really care, so I kind of glazed over that part apparently. But they were going out later that night anyway, so I guess Jason's thing was, "Hey, you want to just go ahead and ride with me? Because by the time we get over there, it's gonna be 5:30. Then I'm gonna, hang out until she's done with this sale, and then it'll be time to go anyway." So they get in Jason's Range Rover and head over there. So he's texting with Lindsay the entire time. So she knew he was running late. And I guess just kind of figured she'd go ahead and get started because I don't think she wanted him with her. I don't think she wanted him in the house. And, he offered to go for her and she didn't want that either. I think she
Mhm.
really wanted to prove herself and be able to do this, but, it sounded a little sketch. So you want to make sure somebody's close by.
Yeah.
So again, the appointment's at 5:30. At 5:38, he sends a text to her saying just a couple of minutes away. He said that, he didn't want to make her look like she couldn't handle things for herself, especially, considering she had made it clear she didn't want him inside with
Mhm.
her. So he and the friend parked nearby just to be there in case, they were needed. And then at 5:41, her phone made an outgoing call. And just kind of to give you, timeline of how things were going.
Yeah, and I can understand her not wanting him in the house.
Yeah.
I mean, but being close because of it being a little sketchy. I mean,
Hmm.
I wouldn't want anybody in the house with me, especially if I'm interacting with people who are going to pay $1 million cash for a home.
Right.
So the slide that's on the screen now, for those listening on podcast, it's a reenacted picture of what it looked like when Lindsay met the couple outside. The woman had said she would be alone, but a man showed up with her, which that would. I have to imagine as a woman, you're always. I mean, unfortunately, you guys are always on guard. You're
Yeah.
always paying attention to your surroundings because, I mean, unfortunately, that's the way it is. So
Yeah.
she's already a little suspicious about this, and then when she shows up, there's a man with the woman there.
Yeah.
So I
Maybe
don't
I
know.
wonder if that's why they dress so nice to kind of play that part of being a fluid and, a couple so it didn't make her feel off.
Yeah, because I mean, the woman showed up in a dress, and he looks like he's in a suit, so it
Yeah, I mean,
doesn't.
if I see a woman show up in heels and a dress, I am not thinking she's out to get me because
Right? Yeah.
you cannot get hardly anything done at high speed in dress and heels. When we worked in finance, I never understood why we didn't have everyday casual day because I got so much more done running around that office when I didn't have to wear heels. I
It
mean,
always makes
so
me
much.
it always makes me laugh when we're watching like one of those cop shows and it's a female detective chasing somebody down in a pair of heels, and I'm like,
Right.
that's not real life. That's
That's a
not a
lie and a
thing.
half. At most, you might get some high heel rubber soled boots, and
Yeah,
that's your high heels as you're
yeah,
running.
right, yeah. But two witnesses saw a Caucasian man and woman walking up the cul-de-sac. The man was around 6 foot tall with dark hair, and the woman was blonde and was said to be wearing a very distinctive dress. They looked to be between 35 and 45. And then the witness saw Lindsay shake hands and go inside with the couple.
Oh wow, yeah. So that's the front of the house.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like $1 million house. I mean, it doesn't look like a bad house. It just doesn't. I guess everything's location, location, location.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, witnesses see him going inside. I'm imagining around 5:30, and then you know uh, they get there a little late. So Jason and Cohen sit outside for about 10 minutes, and then Jason decides he's going to drive to the side road because he didn't want to look like an interfering boyfriend. If anybody were to come out or look out, or they've already sat there for 10 minutes. It doesn't take a ton of time to show a house, so maybe he's thinking, I don't want them to walk out and see me sitting right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he texts Lindsay to make sure she's okay, but he doesn't get any response. So he decides he's going to go to the front door and perhaps, I'm imagine, go in and just see, how things are going. But it's locked. And that to me
Hmm.
screams red flag
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and I only know this. I mean, I've never been a realtor, but there are some things you just know as a woman. And I know as a woman that realtors, especially women, are not locking a door. They do.
Mm,
That is not, I mean, it is absolutely standard practice to leave those doors unlocked.
yeah.
You're not going into a house and locking it. I mean, you're in there with a strange person and you're a female.
Hmm.
Mm-mm. And he looks through the window and sees her shoes, which makes sense because I remember when we've been looking at houses before, they always want you to take your shoes off when you come in. especially $1 million house. I'm assuming they probably got hardwoods they don't want you scratching up.
Yeah, and just to confirm, we were not looking at $1 million houses.
No, we were not. No. Sorry, I was not trying to give that impression. No, we
No.
definitely were not looking at $1 million houses. Although we did go into some nice houses. So,
Yeah, because we
but
were nosy. We wanted to see what it looked like to live in one of those.
well, we live in Alabama too, so you can get a lot for your money. But
That's
this isn't
true.
Canada. You know what I'm
Two-
saying? Like, I think that's why looking at this, I'm like, that's not $1 million house. That's like a $400,000 house in Alabama.
Yeah, but when you can give 2 Keystone lights and a trucker hat, you can at least get $100,000 house here. You know, our
Fair enough.
expectations.
So he looks through the window, sees her shoes, and he's still not able to get in. He is continuing to knock, and there's no answer to this repeated knocking.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, at this point, he's pretty friggin' worried.
Yeah.
So he calls 911, and his friend that was with him, he gives him a boost and basically tosses him over the fence, where they saw a back door wide open, which the front door's locked, the back door's wide open. She's not responding.
Not good.
Well, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
So he calls out to Jason, who told the operator that he was talking to on 911 that they were going inside, and then he hung up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can imagine. I'd be like, peace out. I'm going in the house.
Yeah, for sure.
And they say that as soon as Cohen opened the door, because Cohen, he gives him a boost over the fence. He goes through the wide open back door and runs to the front of the house and unlocks it. And they say that as soon as he opened the door, I guess the thought process was that one of them were going to take the downstairs and one would go upstairs. So Jason immediately runs upstairs. And they said that when he got to about halfway up the stairs, he could already see her. And he found her lying in the master bedroom in a pool of blood, which had to be god awful, especially knowing that you were sitting, 50 feet away?
Yeah, you were right there.
You know me, I'm not good with it. Could have been 5 feet, it could have been 200 feet. I'm just saying, like, he's right outside. So at this point, the friend calls 911 back, and Jason starts trying to perform CPR. And this is, I hate even saying these words because it sounds so sad, but he said that he could hear the air that he was breathing in escaping through her stab wounds. So he knew that the CPR was doing no good, but he just kept trying. I imagine because he's hysterical. EMS does show up shortly thereafter because they find out that as Cohen makes this second call, they had already dispatched somebody to the house. So I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that as he's on the phone the second time, he starts hearing the sirens, and EMS is like already almost there. So EMS again shows up shortly thereafter, only to pronounce her dead at the scene because, again, the CPR, I mean, there's nothing they could do at this point.
I mean, we're talking minutes. So for her to be pronounced dead already.
Yes,
just...
and you know how I mentioned earlier that there was an outgoing call at 5:41. They believe that outgoing call was some kind of, for lack of a better term, a butt dial. They believe that the phone, in the middle of the attack, the phone dialed out, and it ended up calling one of her friends, and it left a voicemail. I believe it was a voicemail that was just a bunch of muffled craziness. So I don't know that they got anything out of the message, but I think that's how they kind of set the exact time of death at 5:40 to 5:41.
Wow. Well, EMS could see that she had been stabbed multiple times, and there were no defensive wounds on her. So what they're thinking is that the killer, whether it was the male or female, I'm not sure, had come up from behind her and attacked her, which gave her absolutely no time to react. And this is what's so strange and makes you think that it was kind of targeted, because none of her possessions were taken, and there was no sign of sexual assault. So it was like they were just there to kill her. And I believe when we were researching this, they said she was stabbed over 40 times.
I think so, yeah. That sounds right.
I mean, that's just, I don't know.
But to me, that sounds like anger. I mean, that sounds like a crime of passion, which doesn't seem to be what this was. She didn't know these people.
Yeah.
I also find it odd that they had an accent, or the woman did anyway when she talked to her, but it's two Caucasian people that show up. That
Yeah.
to me sounded odd.
Yeah, because it's like, did somebody else call her and then two other people showed up?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all for the story as far as what happened. So getting into the investigation, they found out that the cell phone that was used to call her was purchased in Vancouver in November of 2007, so the previous year. But even though somebody purchased it in November of 07, they didn't use it until they called her. So
Mm.
you've got a phone that you're carrying around from November to February, and you don't use it until a call is made to her. That tells me you specifically bought that phone for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was activated under the name of, how do you say that? Paolo? Paolo?
Yeah. Paulo
Yeah,
sounds right.
Rodriguez,
Yeah.
which obviously is believed to be a fake name, in January of '08. So that's another thing I found odd. So the person buys the
Mm.
phone in November, but they wait until January to activate it and then wait till February to use it. It's just,
Mhm.
it's so odd. So apparently you have to register the phone, I guess, when you buy it.
Yeah.
And the address that they registered it to was a real address, but it ended up being a business address. So they believe that there was no connection. They basically just chose an address at random and gave it to them.
Yeah. So if you can choose any address, I don't understand what the point is to register it. I mean,
Yeah, I don't
what?
either. It makes no sense.
But the phone, they can still track it, like, even though it's a burner phone, they can still track the pings on it, and it showed that it traveled from the ferry to Vancouver the day before, and it was deactivated shortly after the murder. So I mean, they bought it early and then used it specifically for this. The police also requested the cell phone tower information on every person who accessed the same towers when each call was made to Lindsay from the burner phone. Um, but they've never released what info, if any, had come from that. I can't imagine the number of like
Yeah.
number of records that you would get from something like that.
But you would think it would provide results. I mean, I would think, like,
Hmm.
if you do basically, I think that they call them tower dumps. So if you do a tower dump from each tower that phone hit, and you see the same phone hitting at each of those towers, how is that not, how does that not immediately tell you, you know,
Yeah.
this is, kind of what we should be looking for? Um, but the thing is, I guess, what if these people got off that ferry, came there, killed her, left, and they never used any other phone? So, we know they didn't make any other calls on that burner phone. And
Yeah.
so if they didn't use their phone, I guess you wouldn't get anything.
Fake names, fake address.
Yeah.
And I mean, if somebody buys a phone that early and only uses it for this day, you got to think they're not taking their personal phones with them. They're probably leaving them behind wherever they're staying. So, I mean,
You'd think. Yeah.
yeah.
So, also the parameters given for looking at houses was very specific. I mean, if you think about it,
Mm.
3 houses, 3 bath, got to have, room for a housekeeper, needs to be this price range. So the police have kind of wondered if the house was planned ahead of time, and they kind of steered her towards them going to those, because it was said that there were like 12 calls in between them. So every time you hear the story, it kind of sounds like they called, they were like, okay, yeah, maybe another call to make the appointment. But apparently there were like a dozen calls in between them going back and forth. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of that was, Lindsay telling them, yeah, I mean, kind of how we've had realtors, they'll say, oh, I got a few more listings. You want me to email them to you, or,
Yeah.
whatever. So I think that it could be, and this is me speculating, purely speculating, but it makes me wonder if these calls weren't her calling with some of the options that she had, and them yay or naying those options to steer exactly where they wanted to go. But I don't know if, I mean, how do you get somebody to the exact house? They had to have maybe planned for a couple different locations, a few different locations. I
Well, I
don't
mean,
know.
you can just call them up and say, "Hey, I want to look at this house." I mean,
Or maybe even if they got a certain number of them, say, yeah, but I want to look at this one first.
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. They probably looked at it with a different realtor and
Oh,
then
could be.
checked it out, and then
But you think they
they,
would have checked that?
yeah. But I mean, it would be difficult to run that down. I mean, because you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to sign in with your information,
Yeah, but
so
they use a lockbox, so you'd have to know who had access to
mm,
the lockbox. I
it
mean,
is true.
typically the realtor will call the showing agent and or the listing agent and ask for the number. So,
Yeah.
or maybe I don't know. Might be on the MLS stuff, so maybe not. I don't know. The police think though that the killers may have visited the house ahead of time so that they could become familiar with it. So, whether that means looking at it with someone else or just I mean, when we say familiar, I don't know how much. I mean, inside of houses are pretty much the same, different layouts, but basically the gist of it.
Yeah.
So, and they could have killed her in any room. So, I think looking at the house to become familiar would be more of a how do we get in, how do we get out? What's the entrance strategy, what's the exit strategy? Because they walked up to this house.
Yeah,
So, where'd they park?
I was getting ready to say, maybe the house was not so much the inside. Of course, they probably did look at the inside, but I'm thinking maybe it's the way the house was positioned on the street to where they parked behind the house and then they walked up so nobody saw what car they had, and then they
Yeah.
left out the back and went to the car that was waiting on a different street.
Yeah, could be. The only thing they could find in her planner, though, was the sheet that you saw. And then in her phone, she had them listed as the Mexicans, which, wow, I hate so much. Um, the only thing I can think, because, we had this recently with the Murdochs and
Hmm.
seeing how Maggie referred in text to the
Yeah.
Mexicans. But to me, that really sounded offensive because she knows these people. They work for her. She knows their names. She's very familiar with them. And yet she chooses to refer to them as if that's the only identifier she has.
Yeah.
Um, I just kind of wondered if maybe I'm bad about answering the phone. Somebody tells me who they are, or meeting somebody and they tell me, and I didn't forgot what they said their name was 5 seconds in. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
because of the fact that she made such a point to say they had an accent, I wonder if that's more why she wrote. I'm just saying I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt and not think that she
Yeah.
was some
Yeah.
sort of racist.
Yeah, it doesn't have the racist undertones that Maggie Murdaugh had when,
Yeah.
because I mean Maggie Murdaugh, she was like, "Oh, I trust the Mexicans to lock up." That's a bit different than trying to put something in your phone to remember who somebody is because you didn't catch their name and you don't remember what it was. So
Yeah.
there it feels different in this situation.
Yeah. Because their accent was the identifier for her.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and she might not have even known the guy's name since she only talked to the woman. So maybe she was trying, just seeing it as, okay, this is the couple. I only know one of their names. I'm just putting the
yeah,
accent.
yeah. Could have been.
So,
It, so it's been reported that there were bloody footprints found on the staircase,
oh my
and
gosh.
yeah, they believe that the suspects were getting their shoes, about to go out the front door, and that's when Jason drove past the house. So then they're thinking that they decided to lock the front door and then go out the back instead. Police have never said whether the murder weapon was found, but did say only one weapon was used, and I'm assuming they know that from the autopsies.
I would imagine, like, maybe just such a specific or distinctive stab wound that they could tell all the wounds were the same,
Yeah.
maybe. And, that kind of, to me, makes me wonder if it wasn't just the man that attacked, because again, I'm not attacking somebody in heels and a short dress. Not happening.
Yeah, plus she didn't have defensive wounds, so I mean, it would make sense
Yeah.
that the man would be the one to attack her.
Unless the man came up and held her while the woman stabbed her.
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know. I guess you could kick your shoes off and well, they were getting their shoes from
yeah,
the front door. So, I guess maybe. However, I will say that I do remember, and I don't think I put it in our notes, but I remember Jason had said in one interview that when he drove by, he saw the shadow of a man in the window at the front door. And so
okay,
that's where they got that from that, you know, he saw someone as he was driving past. And because of the time frame and time, he was running late. He texted her at 5:38 saying almost there. So 5:40 to 5:41 is probably when he was pulling up, which is
Yeah.
exactly when right after that phone call was made. So I imagine, they kill her, they run to the front door and like, oh shit, here's a car driving by, out the
Mm-hmm.
back, out the back, out the back. So they just lock it and take off. They say that Jason and his friend were very cooperative. They cooperated fully with the investigation. Jason even took a polygraph and gave them his phone and laptop to go through, which I'm not doing. I'm not taking a polygraph, and I ain't giving you
Nope.
shit. Like, I'm
Nope.
hiring a lawyer. I don't care. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care. I don't care. You're not putting this on me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the person who studied the laptop did say that chat communications had been recently deleted. They also found that messages had been deleted on Lindsay's Facebook between January 24th and February 3rd, which interesting. But apparently, nothing was found that appeared to pertain to the murder or even a potential motive. So either it was deleted so good they couldn't find. I don't think they ever recovered the chat messages, but I think the Facebook messages and stuff maybe deleted off her wall. She just deleted them, and they don't. I don't think that when they recovered them, they found anything that showed anything sketchy.
It's one of those things that isn't suspicious unless something like this happens.
Yeah.
Type of
And
thing.
a lot of people made a thing of it because they said that prior to January 24th, she was so active on there. But that between the 24th and the 3rd, which how many days is that? What is that? 7 would be.
Yeah, like 10.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I was trying to add that real quick. I'm like, 7, yeah. So that's not a long period. I mean, that's a little over a week. So even if somebody's active all the time, there are times I go 2, 3 weeks without being on Facebook. And then I'm active 2, 3 times a day on there for another few
Yeah.
weeks. And then you don't hear from me again for 2 months. So I don't know if that's a huge
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. I mean, some things you just read more into when
Yeah.
you're trying to investigate something like this. But speaking of investigations, Jason has come out and said he believes that the police totally botched the investigation by spending hours interrogating him and Cohen instead of sending out cars to search for the killers. So, and you hear that a lot. People think that
Yeah.
you spent. Why are you talking to me about this? There's her killers out there. Go get them. Um,
Yeah.
but the police have come out and said that nobody in the family, the Zialo, or however you say that name, but um, they don't consider anybody in that family to be a person of interest or a suspect.
Yeah. I mean, so maybe him turning over all that stuff did work out great for him.
Yeah.
I will say though that even though he did cooperate fully and they don't consider him a suspect or anyone in the family, Lindsay's dad, Jeff Buziak, has said that Jason showed no sign of grief following the murder, which I don't know. Dad says
Mm,
that, but some of the friends says he was just a wreck. And even her sister, Sarah, said that he was sad, hurt, confused, like he just was in shock almost. And I think we forget that shock and grief can look different for everybody. So
yeah, there's not a
how
blueprint.
do you, especially as a man, men don't like to cry. They don't like, they want to try to be there for everybody else. So, how do you know he didn't go home and bawl his damn eyes out? And then by the time he got to the funeral, he didn't have anything left.
Yeah, I
He
mean it
just
is.
was stoic.
Yeah, it is pretty common for guys to, try and be the strong one and then grieve, alone.
Privately. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Jeff Buziak said that Lindsay had told him in 2007 that she saw something she shouldn't have. Don't know
Hmm.
what. He apparently knows. We don't know. In 2012, Jeff said he had just found a letter that Lindsay had written him naming the people and describing things that were happening prior to her death.
Huh.
Really?
Uh,
Mm,
hmm.
sketchy. Like, really,
Yeah,
5 years later, you found this letter?
yeah, and the letter's never surfaced,
Hmm.
but he says she stated in the letter what she saw.
Then why ain't he telling anybody?
Right. I mean, if it's
Tell us.
something that's going to help with solving her murder, but I don't know. But supposedly he turned the letter over to police. Who knows? His ex-wife does not believe this happened, and said the police told her they have never received a letter from him. So it's so weird. I don't understand. Capital Daily News in Vancouver obtained emails between Mr. Buziak and administrators of the website, lindsaybuziak.com, and said that he acknowledged the letter was fake. That's like, what are we doing here? Is the letter real? Is it not? Who has it? Was it turned? I mean,
The
there's a
only
lot of
thing
stuff
I
going
can
on.
think of is there any way he tried to push that so that he could smoke somebody out?
Maybe.
Maybe. Because I
I
mean,
mean,
we know dad loved her. It's not like her dad's trying to, like, what's he trying to pull? He didn't kill her.
yeah.
So,
Well, the Capital
uh,
Daily tried last year to have redactions lifted from court documents in the case, and the judge he ruled against it, saying it could quote compromise the safety of confidential informants or put the physical safety of a third parties at risk.
that's
Hmm.
interesting.
It is. It is.
So, theories. Police have suggested that she may have been misidentified as someone who informed on a drug operation, which I guess could make sense. Like, if they misidentified her as another informant, maybe that's what's in those records. Maybe the actual informant is in those records. So,
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean,
you know,
if she did see something she wasn't supposed to,
yeah, I mean, she visited her dad who lived in Calgary in December of '07. A few weeks later, the Calgary police raided a house in the city and seized 80 kilos of cocaine worth $8 million, which they said is the biggest drug bust in the history of Calgary. But here's
ooh,
my thing, that was in December. So who in November is like, I need to get a phone?
yeah,
Why? Why are you buying a phone a month before this even happened?
yeah. And I mean, there's no evidence she was ever involved in any kind of criminal activity or drug use. So
No, none that they could find.
none at all.
Um, I think the thing is that after she got home, they found that she looked at a Facebook page of a relative of one of the people involved in the drug operation and then tried to contact him by phone. And I believe that he might have been an ex or related to an ex. I think she had an ex-boyfriend who might have been involved in some stuff.
Hmm.
But the police said they have no idea why she tried to contact him, whoever this
Yeah,
person was.
that's odd.
Yeah.
Um, going back to the drugs, I mean, that's a lot of cocaine. I mean,
Hmm.
and when it comes to cartels, somebody got punished in the
Oh my
probably
gosh.
in a very torturous way. But
Yeah.
police have reported that they do not believe that this was any kind of cartel hit. Um, they believe it was too personal, was planned by somebody who had access to the info where she worked. And I mean, it kind of makes sense that it's personal. I mean, 40 stab
Yeah.
wounds is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty personal. That's a lot of rage.
It's just wild though, because wouldn't the personal who had this personal grievance want to be the one to? I mean, that's why they call it a crime of passion, because someone in the moment has this, and they lose their shit and stab somebody.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, nothing about this makes sense.
It really
I mean, it
doesn't. It really
really
doesn't.
doesn't. It doesn't. In 2022, Shirley, who is Jason's mom, sued Jeff Buziak for defamation. She alleged he, quote, published or arranged to have published posts falsely accusing her of murder.
Yeah, my understanding is that he's really pushed the it was Shirley and Jason, one or the other, who did this.
And I mean, you need to have some proof. You
Yeah,
can't
like you
just,
can't just be doing that.
no, I mean, you need to have
Ugh.
some proof before you do
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Later in 2008, so she's killed beginning of February. Later that year, a close friend of Lindsay's, whose name was Nikki. It says known as Nikki, so my thing is like, does that mean that's her name, or maybe her name was Nicole and they know her as Nikki? I don't know. Whatever. All I could find was known as Nikki. So Nikki tells people that she got a call in the middle of the night, and it was a woman, and she said that the woman had a strange accent, but that she just woke up. She's half asleep. So she didn't catch much of what the woman said before she hung up. So I'm guessing the way she explained it was like she answers the phone, the woman starts talking, and it's like she's trying to wake up and it's like, who is this? And maybe the woman realized she called the wrong person. So the lady hung up. So she didn't really get a lot out of the conversation.
Well, she tried calling back, and she said 20 to 30 times before she finally got an answer. Yeah, it's like, no, I'm going to get you on the phone. Like, we're about to talk. So
I'm guessing it hit her like, oh damn.
Yeah.
Lindsay had a caller with a strange accent right before she died. So I need to find out who the hell this is.
Mm-hmm. But who answered the phone?
Oh,
Shirley.
God.
Shirley answered the phone.
I could see how Jeff Buziak might be a little concerned.
Yeah, and she said she was trying to call another Nikki, her secretary. But my thing is Shirley didn't have an accent.
Yeah, so why would she be? Because the thing is, like, who would she be pretending to be for somebody? Like,
and why did it take 20 to 30 times for her to finally pick up? I mean, she just trying to call somebody. If she's trying to call somebody, her secretary, another Nikki, just that's convenient. But why did it take so long for her to answer the phone?
The only thing I can think is that if she was trying to do something sketchy, she's calling this person who she thinks is who she's trying to call. She's using this accent and then realizes, oh crap, I called the wrong person, and hung up real fast. And then she doesn't want anybody to know it's her. So she doesn't want to answer the phone when they call back. But after 30 rings, she's like, for God's sakes, I got to answer. They're never going to let this go.
Yeah, right.
So, she's like, think fast. What can I say? Oh, I'll just tell them I was trying to call another Nikki.
And you think that would be easy to look into. Does she have, somebody that works for her that's named Nikki?
The thing is, Shirley says this absolutely never happened. And it hasn't been said whether the claim was even investigated by police. So nothing has come from this. And to me, something should have come from that if it was a thing.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, what are the odds?
You should at least look into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I called her. No, you didn't. Okay, well, let's just clear this up. I mean, phone records would prove it. It'd be pretty simple to see. I don't know why they wouldn't have followed that up. But in 2017, there's a website that is run by Lindsay's dad, and somebody posted this, and this is, it's one of those things where could it be true? Maybe, but it feels like it's more of somebody just trying to really just torture the family, because the post said, I killed Lindsay and stupid cops will never prove it. So, and this is another thing that you could run down. You could figure out where that came from, or at least attempt to, but just the thought that if it not the person that did it, just the thought that somebody would do that, it's disgusting.
Yeah, it really, really is. And there's more to that post. I saw it after I wrote this up, but I mean, it wasn't like a ton more, just basically the same stuff over and over. Just they'll never catch me, blah blah. Then in 2020, Capital Daily found out that a second phone was used. Apparently, there were two phones purchased, and one of them was used to contact. So the second phone was used to contact the voicemail of the first phone. And my question is, from where?
Yeah, and that long after?
Yeah, like what? How in the hell?
Yeah, it happened in 2008. So 12 years later? That's
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why did it, and how did you come across that information? Like 12 years later, you just happened to find out there was another phone?
Yeah.
How?
And who's tracking that?
I know.
I mean,
it just makes me wonder, though, if there were two phones and one was used to call the voicemail of the other and check it, to me, that makes it sound as if you got two people trying to send messages to one another.
Yeah.
Without anybody figuring out who it is.
Yep.
So to me, that says murder for hire.
I mean, it kind of does. It has that feel to it. But this is a long time after it's happened. Yeah. I mean, nothing about this really makes any sense at all. I mean, it really doesn't.
Well, and the thing is, the phone wasn't used 12 years later to contact that phone. It was just they found out that at the time there had been another phone that contacted that phone's
I
voicemail.
see what you're saying. Okay.
But the thing is, they didn't say if both those phones were bought together or I don't know.
Yeah, was it registered to the same fake name and fake address?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
And it's odd to me that they didn't find that to start with. I mean, I don't know. So they said there were no calls on the phone other than the call to Lindsay or contacting her, those calls, that there was nothing else on the phone. But I wonder if the second phone called the first phone, is it just they called and immediately hit star whatever to get into the voicemail so it didn't register the call at first? Or I don't know. It's weird to me.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that could potentially have been followed up on or missed, if it seems like, in this investigation.
Yeah.
But
so what do you think?
I mean,
Right, I don't know.
The only thing that I would need to know more about Jason and Lindsay's relationship. Like, I can't see any reason why he would want to have her murdered, because it's like she's just getting started in her career. So it's not like she's got, a ton of money, and they're not married. So it's not like she's got a big life insurance policy that it can take. And from what we've read, it doesn't seem like they had a relationship that would lead to this. I have no idea. I really don't. But the 40 stab wounds, to me, that doesn't scream a professional hit. Because I mean, that's too much. I mean, typically it's just, execution style in the back of the head, and they move on with their life. So I have no idea. I don't even know what to think. I have no idea. None.
I know. It's wild. It almost, because of the fact that somebody was, calling to check the voicemail, the other one tells me, maybe a murder for hire. But who hired them? Because for them to stab her 40 times and there to be no defensive one. So it wasn't like they stabbed her 40 times because she was fighting back. They just stabbed her 40 times because they were pissed. So to me, that does make it sound more cartel or some kind of drug thing, because even though I'm hiring you to go kill her, or I'm sending you to go kill her, you're as pissed as I am that you're having to do this.
Maybe.
Because she done effed up her whole drug deal.
But even the cartels, I mean, they do things that leave messages. I mean, somebody stabbed 40 times is horrific, but it's not the kind of message that a cartel would send.
That's true.
Usually I've got a pretty good idea of what I think happened, and usually I'm nowhere near correct. But this it almost seems like it's just like a thrill kill for them. Like, let's see if we can get, because I mean, I don't see anything that would lead me to believe that it's a professional hit, because you don't stab somebody that many times on a professional hit. And I mean, even going through the whole finding the house and all that, there's still so many parts where somebody could see you. Because I mean, you're going into a neighborhood, so that doesn't say professional hit either. And Jason had somebody with him the entire time, and it's hard for me to believe that one person keeps their mouth shut for this long without saying anything.
I don't think that.
So
for sure not.
So to me, if I had to pick something, it would be that. It would be that this couple just wanted to kill somebody and see what it felt like.
I mean, actually, that probably does sound like the most reasonable explanation, because people saw them walking up the cul-de-sac and saw her shake hands with them. So it's not even a matter of even Cohen keeping his mouth shut. Like, the way the timeline, they wouldn't have got there early enough, I don't think. She wouldn't have had her shoes off in there, because when she's showing them the house, and people saw her go in with a whole different couple. So
what's you almost wonder, like, are they not able to get some kind of DNA? Because if you're walking in heels or in dress shoes or whatever, and your feet are probably going to sweat a little bit, and then you take your shoes off and you walk across the floors, you think there would be something there that they could swab and find DNA for.
You'd think.
So I don't know, but to me, it sounds like, unfortunately, it sounds like a random murder because two people wanted to see what it felt like.
Why do you think they called with an accent?
The same reason I don't think the way they dress is typical for them either. I think it was
No.
just, I mean, I just think it was part of, a disguise. So using an accent on the phone, because I mean, think about it. She put the Mexicans down as who she was going to see. So, I mean, it worked.
So maybe if nobody had seen them,
Yeah.
they would have thought, I don't know, other than she was going to meet a Hispanic couple.
Yeah.
Or a couple of from somewhere else. They clearly weren't from here. That actually is smart.
Yeah. So, I mean, and all they have is
Yeah.
they do know what the dress looks like because they were able to find it. But that also, like, if you're able to find what the dress looks like, how many dresses like that are out there?
Yeah.
And then the only other thing you got is a 6-foot white dude. I mean, there's plenty of those running around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so really, if that's all you have, the only thing you can really go with is, how she wrote the Mexicans down. So now you're just looking for somebody with an accent, potentially a Mexican accent. And because they also use the name, that would lead you to believe they're Hispanic when they register the phone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it's probably also why it hasn't been solved. I know a lot of murders occur, and it's, family or friends or somebody that's in their inner circle or whatever. But I mean, this sounds like just a random stranger, which would be why it would be so difficult to solve.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my theory anyway.
Yeah, actually that does make a lot of sense. I mean, it really does. I just wonder what she thought when she met them and they were Caucasian, like.
Well, I mean, also she met them and there was a dude with her.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't supposed to be there either.
I mean, I could even get past that though, because you could say, I thought my husband was going to have to work, but he actually was able to make it out here, or I brought my husband because he wanted to, see the house. Since he had some time off, he was able to, see the house too before, because they're buying it in 3 days. So it's not like you're going to get to come back and see it.
Yeah.
So if he can make time to get there with you, I mean, I would buy that as a realtor. But the accent thing, I'd be like, whoa. I was just talking to a Hispanic person a couple days ago on the phone, and you clearly are not that. So what the hell?
Yeah.
Because we're not just talking speaking Spanish. We're talking had an accent as if they were Hispanic. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, so it just to me it sounds like just a true stranger that showed up and wanted to do it, and unfortunately, it looks like they got away with it because I don't know if there's any real investigation going on because I don't know if there's anything for them to any leads for them to actually run down at this point.
Huh. I wonder. I imagine they would have put this in like VICAP to see if there was any other cases that were like this, because I swear it kind of makes me want to go start searching to see if there's any other cases similar to this situation. Because
it would.
I don't know. You would think they would do something like this again.
Yeah, or if they do, they may not do it the same way. It may become completely different. They may have a different way.
I mean, they put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah.
Like a lot of thought and planning went into this.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember reading that when they found out where the phone had been purchased, they tried to go back to the store and get information, but it had been so long since the phone was purchased in November, the tapes were gone.
Mm-hmm.
So they were even smart enough to save this phone long enough that there is no way they would be found on surveillance tapes buying it. Because that's how they usually get people. You know, it's not that they can trace the phone back to you. They can trace the phone back to the store that sold it. And then they go to the store and bam, you're there on, video. But they even accounted for that.
Yeah. And the cartel hit theory, I mean, they get their messages different ways. I mean, they're not buying a burner phone 3 months before or 4 months before they're going to do something. I mean, they just get a call, or whatever, and they go do it. And
they also don't necessarily care about anybody knowing who they are, because they're just sending somebody across the border to kill them and then come back. And from Mexico to Canada, that's a damn waste.
Well, yeah. I mean, assuming it's a Mexican cartel. But,
I was just, I guess I'm thinking because Hispanic, but yeah.
But I mean, it could have been somebody. It could have been in America and just crossed the Canadian border. I mean, there's so many possibilities, but I don't think that's what happened here. I think it was just. I think it's just a couple who wanted to see what it felt like, which is sad. Regardless of what it was, it's just such a senseless, horrible tragedy.
It is.
I mean, just
it really is.
24-year-old just starting life, and then this happens. So
yeah,
but
and to be him, I cannot imagine having to live with that. Because I mean, he did not do anything. There's nothing he could have done. But all you're going to be thinking, because people, what if everything that happens bad in life? What if I'd done this? What if I done that? So I feel like he's going to spend the rest of his life wondering, what if I had just went straight in? What if I had insisted on going with her? What if I had insisted on going for her? So
I mean, especially if he would have seen them talking outside and noticed that there was another guy there, that would make me want to just go in regardless, because it's like, okay, look, they need to buy a house in 3 days, so they're either going to buy from you or they're not, regardless if I'm standing here, because it would make me nervous. I wouldn't want to see you go in and show a house when you're supposed to be showing a woman, and then a guy shows up with her.
Yeah. No. Well, and that's another thing. He was running late. It's the only reason he wasn't there. So, that's probably another thing that's going to eat at him.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine the guilt. So there's
not
so
that
many...
he should feel guilty, but
no. Yeah. I mean, it's human nature. There's no way it won't. But that is the story of Lindsay Buziak. I mean, it's a sad, tragic story. And
it is.
Unfortunately, it's one of those that probably will never be solved.
Sadly, yeah.
So that is everything for this week. Please make sure you subscribe. Hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening to podcasts, make sure you subscribe that way. So we'll be back next week with another case.